Hello and welcome to Sunday Politics, reaching you live from our global headquarters here in the nation's commercial nerve center, Lagos. I'm Jeffrey Uzanga. 7 days down the new year and many days ahead for you to make the most of 2024, and we'll ensure you don't miss out on developments in the polity as we continue to track it for you. Well, tonight, two issues are in focus on the show: the avalanche of revelations in the Ministry of Humanitarian Affairs and Poverty Alleviation, bordering on high-scale allegations of fraud and unethical practices, plus the continuous alignment of APC members in Benue State along loyal lines, or loyalty lines, if we will, to either the governor, Hyacinth Alia, and the secretary to the government of the Federation, Senator George Akume, the latest being a fallout of the primaries ahead of the by-elections in February. But before I introduce my guests over this issue of allegations of fraud in the Ministry of Humanitarian Affairs, let's take you through some, let's call it a short sequence of events on how we got here in the first place. Now, the Ministry of Humanitarian Affairs has been in the news. The EFCC actually did arrest a suspect, Mr. James Okwete, a contractor, over money laundering allegations. That was the first disclosure. Now, Okwete, or Mr. Okwete, is alleged to be an ally of the former Minister of Humanitarian Affairs, Sadiya Umar Farouk. Now, the EFCC says between 2018 and 2023, Mr. Okwete received a sum of 37.1 billion naira from the ministry, perhaps for contracts or so. Now, the funds were domiciled in 5 legacy banks across 38, you need to get this fact, bank accounts, according to information we got. Now, how were these funds appropriated that alerted the EFCC in their investigation? They say 6.7 billion was sent to BDC operators. 540 million naira was withdrawn cash. 288 million naira was used for purchasing all kinds of cars, and 2.2 billion naira for purchase of property either in Abuja or Enugu State. Now, the former Minister of Humanitarian Affairs, Mrs. Umar Farouk, has denied complicity in all of this. She says this gentleman called James Okwete is completely unknown to her. Well, she was invited by the EFCC. She didn't show up and later wrote to them saying that she was indisposed, seeking an extension. As we're trying to deal with all of that, the national coordinator and CEO of the National Social Investment Program was suspended by the president. I was invited by the EFCC over issues of movements of some amount of money totaling about 44 billion or so. Now, whilst that was going on, we saw the leaked memo that shows the Minister of Humanitarian Affairs and Poverty Alleviation, allegedly Dr. Betta Edu, approving the payment of 585 million naira into a private account of Mrs. Bridget Mojisola Oniyelu. Now, the funds, according to the minister, was meant for disbursement to vulnerable people in Akwa Ibom, Cross River, Lagos, and Ogun State under the federal government poverty intervention program, which is more like trying to reach out to vulnerable groups. Now, the minister reacted to say she insists that she followed due process. Now, after a while, we got a release from the office of the Attorney General of the Federation, or Accountant General of the Federation, I should say, denying honoring that payment. According to the Accountant General's office, they say allocations are released to self-accounting MDAs in line with the budget, and such MDAs are responsible for the implementation of their project and payment for such project. A lot has been happening. There has been public uproar and reactions, and a lot of people are talking, including Serap, the rights group, and they are saying the federal government has to react, and react urgently, or respond and investigate urgently. Well, just a few minutes ago, we saw a release from the Ministry of Information. I may have to read that word for word if possible, that the Ministry of Information and National Orientation acknowledges the concerns raised by the public regarding the alleged payment of funds into a private account by the Ministry of Humanitarian Affairs and Poverty Alleviation. The ministry says we are aware of the narratives circulating widely and wish to assure Nigerians that government takes these issues most seriously. The federal government, under the leadership of President Bola Tinubu, is transparent and accountable to the people. and committed to ensuring that public funds are allocated and utilized effectively and efficiently to address the needs of Nigerians. We got this release just a few moments ago. Now, they say in the light of this recent event, the president has directed that a thorough and comprehensive investigation be conducted to ascertain the accuracy and validity of the reported details. The government is determined, in their words, to unravel the truth as it relates to this matter and ensures that appropriate action will be taken to ensure that any breaches and infractions that are identified are decisively punished in line with the administration's commitment to public accountability and due process. So that is the latest release coming from this was actually signed by the Minister of Information and National Orientation, Mr. Mohammed Idris, telling the public, like, we've heard you and we're going to act. Well, I'm being joined on the program on this particular issue of the fraud allegations and unethical behavior in the Ministry of Humanitarian Affairs. We're going to speak about this or look at this quite broadly by the Executive Director of Civil Society Legislative Advocacy Center, CISLAC, Mr. Awal Rafsanjani, who joins us from our Abuja studio. Mr. Rafsanjani, thank you so much for coming on the program.
Thank you very much, and good evening, viewers.
Well, Mr. Rafsanjani, I tried to look at the sequence of events. Maybe that's where we'll start from before we dig deep into specifics, coming down to the latest, because it looks like every other day there is a new revelation and counter accusations and accusations. But let's look at it this way. Looking at the entire sequence, are you worried, like every Nigerian, about this development and the scale of it, even though it's an allegation under the law?
Certainly, there's no any patriotic Nigerians that will not be concerned and worried with this monumental fraud and corruption perpetuated by some public official. Therefore, if you look at the deepening poverty, the collapse of infrastructure, the collapse of education, healthcare system, and lack of decency of life in Nigeria, and lack of also enabling security, and virtually the economy collapsing, you must be worried and concerned, particularly when some of these funds have to be borrowed, from very expensive commercial banks with the higher, rate interest, and now instead of applying these resources for the purposes of which the loans are borrowed for, they end up going into private pocket. Now, you recall, CISLAC and other civil society organizations had advised President, Ahmed Tinubu to actually make anti-corruption a priority in his administration. This is to block leakages, to prevent this kind of corruption and diversion of public taxpayers' money from happening. But sadly, we've seen so many people with allegation of corruption being, appointed either at the legislature level or at the executive level, or even at the ruling party level. So definitely, this is a huge concern. The good thing about this development is that this is a situation that has been going on, and I can assure you, because I have, information on how this kind of diversion of public taxpayers' money has been going on, creating, a dubious account in the name of project account by some public official. If you remember, the last administration set up what they call transparency portal, and this committee was, housed at the, Accountant General Office, and its membership include EFCC, ICPC, some few, non-governmental organization, and the revelation in that committee is so overwhelming that an individual would be diverting huge amounts of money into personal account in the name of project account. So sadly, despite the revelation that came out at that time, no punishment was done to anybody. So when this Ministry of Humanitarian that is supposed to be sympathizing with the condition of the poor Nigerians, but now being used to siphon in the name of vulnerable groups in Nigeria, siphon public taxpayers' money to individuals to enrich themselves. It's only coming out because public got to know this. Ordinarily, they will have killed it. As you can see that there was a desperate effort, including, sponsoring some faceless, group in the name of civil society to say that there's nothing that has been wrong, that has been done wrongly. I think EFCC and ICPC, we must salute them for their courage to continue to unravel and investigate this kind of monumental corruption and diversion of public taxpayers' money. The only concern that I have, whether EFCC and ICPC patriotic work will be appreciated by the political class, particularly by the government, because if all the effort they are making and the media, the civil society that are bringing out this issue, and if all this they are doing and there's no political will to decisively deal with this and block the leakages, because there's nowhere where we have, in our financial regulation, in our public procurement law, in our due process law, there's nowhere it is allowed for individual to house this huge amount of money. In fact, the annoying thing is that this, some of these contractors, they have nothing to do even with the ministry. They are not even staff. So it is a very clear, systematic, fraudulent way to siphon public taxpayers' money when Nigerians are dying. They cannot even afford, even decent meals. They cannot pay school fees for their children. They cannot pay medical bill. They cannot even get potable drinking water. They cannot even pay rent. Many people, they cannot even have the money to pay their house rent. Not to talk of honoring, any house in any, city in this country. Yet, this huge amount of money is being taken every day. Now, let me say, it is not only the humanitarian ministry appears that this thing is happening. If you go and investigate, you find out the same thing are happening in other places. But I am happy that this has come out to the public, which means that there will be more scrutiny, and it is also, a tax before the National Assembly relevant committee in terms of its responsible and proper oversight. Because if all these are happening and the National Assembly is not playing the role they are supposed to play in terms of oversight, you have public account that is supposed to also be looking at this. You also have the accountant, the Auditor General, whose report has not been taken serious in this country. In the previous report he had, reported, he shows so many ministries and parastatals collecting money, no auditing. In fact, as if they just collect this money and work it. So I think, Nigerians are beginning to understand the evil of corruption and political corruption, because when people, use money to use dirty money to get into election and procure, appointment, because many of the appointment, some people allegedly are buying it. And once you commercialize appointment for public service, it means that it is going to be, using public resources for personal gain. So therefore, it is a clerical call for the government at local, state, and national level to make sure that when they are making an appointment, like civil society have suggested, choose, people who have integrity, who have capacity, who understand the rudiments, of the civil service or public service, including financial regulation, including even the public procurement. Choose people who are patriotic, who have fear of God, not people who will just come and pack public taxpayers' money into their own personal money. Allegations are going around that many of them, from just the time they are appointed to date, they have gotten, they have bought themselves, houses, very expensive houses and cars. So many allegations of such kind of thing are happening while there are masses. The masses are struggling to even eat once. This is very wicked, and that is a total misunderstanding and misrepresentation of democracy. And that is why CISLAC has been advocating and advising the president to carry out serious reform, in a manner that public officials will know the consequences of, deviating from the rules, from the norms. No country can sustain this kind of monumental looting and corruption that is happening in Nigeria. Even America cannot survive the looting that is going on in Nigeria.
If I may butt in.
It is a clerical call, and I'm happy that government has come out to acknowledge that, yes, there is public concern on this, and I hope that government will take decisive action on this.
All right, Mr. Rafsanjani, there's a lot to talk about. We're going to break it down as much as possible as we continue with the program. But that, as you were speaking, I just remembered that the last administration under which some of these things are now coming out, because we understand we can't state everything we know, that about 3 ministries are being investigated to the tune of almost 150 billion naira fraud allegation. That's a level, that's a scale of alleged corruption going on. But what does this say to, because the last administration did say that one of their cardinal agenda is to fight corruption, and this is now coming out as being investigated by the current administration. What does that say?
No, why should we be surprised? Right from the time when we saw the administration debated and it has no clear agenda on the anti-corruption, we cautioned and we gave advice. But some of the so-called spokesperson, they will come here and insult everybody and abuse everybody, and therefore the corruption went on in a manner that, you know, it is unprecedented in this country. So it is just a clear vindication of all the things that we have been talking about, that the government of the previous government did not actually take anti-corruption serious. They were just using it for political gain, for them to get relevance. And you can see that at the end of the regime, the regime become more ridiculous. You know, a lot of fraudulent things, you know, were happening, including fake Nigerian air. You see how much money has been debated, debated in the name of Nigerian air. You've seen how, you know, all these various ministries, you know, are engaged or are involved in those fraudulent things. And if you really have an anti-corruption agenda, those things cannot happen. If only you have taken only 1/3 of all the advices that civil society have been given to the government, you know, I'm telling you, we would have, been able to, you know, block leakages. Now, in this country, under the same regime, both Buhari and Tinubu regime, our financial institutions are being used to finance terrorism. Last administration promised to unveil the name of sponsors of terrorism. Till today, nobody's name has been mentioned. So this government of Tinubu is very clear. It came because, of course, they need money. The country is broke, so they are doing everything possible to also find money. Just like the way Buhari came, you know, they made all the noise. At the end of the day, nobody has been prosecuted, you know, for all those, you know, claims that Buhari administration was talking about. Because as long as there's this political settlement, as long as this, political, arrangement is there, you come to the party and then all your sin is forgiven. Nobody will take you serious. That is why we are facing international isolation. Whether you like it or not, today Nigeria lost tremendous respect across the world because of the way and manner in which things are done. Any public official that will come and dismiss, you will see that Nigerians and the international community will laugh at him. But we have a serious problem. And we, as responsible, patriotic Nigerians, we have a stake. This is our country. We must do everything possible to ensure that our country is not destroyed by few elite who steal and divert public taxpayers' money, and when they die, their children will take the money to be taking drugs, to be drinking, and be doing all sorts of criminality. So what is the value? You carry the money, go keep abroad. The one that you have here, you die, your children inherit the money, and they start taking drugs, and that is the end of it. What legacy is this? So I think there's a consequences to this kind of situation. But I think more importantly, the Tinubu administration must support EFCC and ICPC as well as Code of Conduct to carry out their work. They must support them financially, politically, legally, and what have you. Because if we don't have these agencies to do the work that they are doing, this country will be in trouble, because the corrupt, groups of elite in Nigeria are so powerful that they can undermine even the work of both EFCC and ICPC as well as Code of Conduct. And to start with, these public officials, have they declared their asset? Have they been verified? Have their asset been verified? You cannot be able to have successful fight against corruption or have a decency in governance when public officials are not declaring their asset as required by the Constitution. And even if they declare fake declaration. They make fake declaration, or they make an anticipatory declaration. If they plan to steal 20 billion they will tell you that they have, 25 billion in their account or in their asset. But no capacity to verify. That is why this is...
Yeah, my apologies, if I may button, so I can take as many questions as possible. So let's go to some specifics, because if you go across border, Nigerians are asking questions. There are two sides to this story. On one hand, Nigerians are livid that such amount is being approved and sent to private account. We're going to deal with the specifics of that. The other angle is saying it's because the minister is exposing some fraud in the NSIPA. That's why it's like corruption fighting back. So it depends on what side you're listening. But let's go in phases now. For those who are not familiar with how civil service works, from where did the minister get the powers for such approvals? And how much can the minister actually approve? Because we saw that document, and, well, she didn't deny that the document is there. She just said, look, I followed due process according to what we saw. So what level of, what can she approve? So how much can she approve? So that we'll begin to know the borderline of legality or otherwise.
So actually, this is very simple. You, in the civil service or in the ministry, no one person is the sole initiator and executor and approver and everything. There's a division of labor. And that is why in this, allegation or in this case, there must be other people to answer query. Because you have a permanent secretary who is supposed to be the accounting officer in that ministry. And you have a public procurement law that must be complied with for goods and services. Even if it is for consultancy, there must be, procurement. And you have financial regulation that clearly spells out how funds are going to be used. Now, if you, deviate from all those things, and you just use your connection with Bila, to do whatever you want to do, definitely there will be consequences. So what I'm trying to say is that being a minister does not mean that, you are going to be the only person that will do everything. There must be procedure, there must be check and balances even within the ministry. So the minister, yes, can approve, but before the approval, there is supposed to be a memo, there are supposed to be a various, check from different, departments before you arrive at. And that is why I want to believe that the fraud perpetrated by both the alleged previous coordinator and the previous minister, that's the former minister of Humanitarian Affairs, Sadia, and the current one, definitely they work with some people. So where are those people? What role have they played? If we really want to get to the root cause of this, we must get them to also be investigated. Being that you are a minister does not mean that if you are working under a minister, you should commit atrocities because ministers say you should go and interfere, then you should interfere. No. As a matter of fact, you are guided by the code of conduct, code of ethics. If the minister tells you to do something that is against the financial regulation, that is against the public procurement law, that is against the due process, you have responsibility to draw the attention of the minister by putting it in writing, not verbal, so that there will not be any denial. So let EFCC go through all those memos that have been raised before this money are put. And if it was just an outright diversion and approval to carry out this money, then that one is even more dangerous and more criminally minded process. So I want to believe that there must be process, there must be procedure, and anybody who has commit error or commit any deliberate or conscious thing towards aiding this corruption, that person should not be spared. It should not stop at only minister. It should not be stopped at only the suspended coordinator. There must be chain of people, and there are some chain of line of approval. So everyone must be investigated because this is the only way to stop and prevent further occurrence of this kind of fraudulent thing happening. Because if you don't do this, I can tell you that it is going to be business. It will continue business as usual. So we must checkmate. And again, lack of proper orientation of some of these public appointees is also part of the challenges. You will agree with me. Many of them, they have not have experience in public service. So they come, you are a minister, you are desperate to make money, to buy houses in, Abuja, Port Harcourt, Lagos, London, and with, thank God, with our advocacy, they can no longer carry money to go and buy a house in London. They must explain where they got the money. And that's what we are pushing internationally. Now we succeeded also at international level in America now. If any public official demands bribe in Nigeria, if Nigerian lawyers, Nigerian judges cover you up, if you enter America, you will be rest assured that you'll be, arrested and prosecuted. That's part of what we have pushed in the U.S. and government of the United States has enacted that law now. So we cannot, if you escape justice in Nigeria,
Mr. Rafsanjani, if I may, because that's where they go. Okay, so you've touched on it, but I want to expand on it. If you look at the federal government financial regulations, which we quoted a couple of times, so let's tell Nigerians what exactly you're saying. In Chapter 7, that 713 provision of that federal government financial regulation, I'm going to read it, what it says. It says, personal money shall in no circumstances be paid into a government bank account, nor shall any public money be paid into a private bank account. An officer who pays public money into a private account is deemed to have done so with a fraudulent intention. With the issue of Dr. Betta Edu, who we saw that letter addressed to the Accountant General, which the Accountant General acknowledged that it came, but she didn't honor. Is this, for her, is this a question for you of ignorance of the law or inexperience, or, as the law would say, an intention to commit fraud by your assessment?
I think, in my opinion, it's not about ignorance. I think it's the impunity. People just want to make money through all sorts of, means, and therefore they don't care about the due process. They don't care about the law. I don't think there's any public officer at that high level that will not, familiarize himself or herself with those fundamental regulations. Because if you don't comply with it, there's a consequences, there's penalty for that. So I don't think any serious public official will just simply not be aware of those kind of provision. But because of the impunity, and because some people believe that they are untouchable, they have Godfather in the villa, so they can do anything and get away with it. Let me say that if not because of public outcry, if not because of the media and the civil society sustaining this issue would have as well be buried. But because of the resilience of the civil society, the media, and the general public who have been victim of this, fraud, now government is posed to respond by saying that, yes, we have had this, government will take action. In the past, probably you may not even hear anything. The matter will just die. So, but it is good that the public mobilize, sensitize about this, and it is important that we sustain this issue until justice is done, because the amount of money that are being stolen on a daily basis in Nigeria, any country in this world that's experienced this will have collapsed. But Nigeria, for some reason, we have not yet completely collapsed, but we have already been wounded because the economy is sick, is down, and people just do things, arrogantly with impunity, break the law, and they think that they are untouchable. So it is important that we stress the fact that training and retraining of public officials are done, because many of the public officials probably have just resumed work without proper orientation and without any, clarity on the work. That is why sometimes you will see also contradiction, overlapping from one ministry to another, because there has not been proper harmonization. So we are calling on the Secretary to the government to actually do proper orientation if there are gaps in terms of knowledge of public service rules and regulation. And that's supposed to have happened before even the appointment is done, so that you only actually have people with experience, with the capacity, with the integrity, with the patriotic mind, with the developmental agenda into the government. Not people who simply because they pay money, you appoint them, or simply maybe because you want to reward people who have helped you, in rigging election or in subverting the will of the people, then you carry appointment and give them. If you do this thing, you will see this kind of thing that is going on. So I think it is important that as a nation, we rise up to strengthen our institutions. Our institutions are virtually collapsing. We are lacking, integrity in our public institutions.
Okay. Mr. Rafsanjani, you're just going to stay. We are due for a break, so we'll go for this break. When we come back, we'll continue this conversation and look at how it impacts the Renewed Hope agenda. Is it a stain on that Renewed Hope agenda, or is the government being vigilant to ensure that anybody that wants to ruin his reputation is brought to book? Mr. Rafsanjani has not left. He's going to join us after the break. Join us again. Welcome back. Sunday Politics right here on Nigeria's lead station, Channels Television. We're broadcasting live from our global headquarters here in Lagos. We've been talking about the fraud allegation in the Humanitarian Ministry that involved both the past and the current, and to try to hear all sides of the story. As a matter of fact, the federal government has now launched a probe. The government has said that, look, we hear you, the people of Nigeria, and we're ready to find out exactly what the truth is, and we will ensure you get to know the truth. My guest has been Awal Rafsanjani, Executive Director, Civil Society Legislative Advocacy Center, CISLAC. Mr. Rafsanjani, thank you for staying with us. So one question I just have to throw in before we wrap up this session. So the federal government has said they're going to do something, and they're going to be very clear with the people. What do you expect from the federal government? And vis-a-vis, do you think this has further eroded the trust quotient of Nigeria on public service, fiscal discipline, or recklessness, if you will?
Thank you very much. I think this is very commendable of the government to acknowledge and appreciate the yearning and aspiration of Nigerians to see that corruption and corrupt, officials are severely dealt with, but more importantly, to block them from happening. And I'm very confident on the leadership of the EFCC and ICPC to carry out this work without fear or favor, because they have name to protect, they have integrity to protect, and the whole world is watching. This is a global village now. Whatever you are doing, you are being seen and watched by the world. And if you don't deal with issue like this, it is going to be difficult for even the investors to have confidence in Nigerian system to come and invest. So there's a lot of reason why government must take this thing very seriously, especially as the country is broke, and even creditors are not even willing to continue to give loan to Nigeria, despite the fact that we are paying huge service to the money that we have borrowed so far, what you cannot even see what they have done with the money. These are all part of what they have borrowed money for, now ending up in individual pockets. So I'm very confident that with the public pressure, with the media continue to do its work, with the civil society supporting the sincere effort of government, particularly supporting EFCC and ICPC, they should be able to do the needful. We will not let this matter die. This is just one out of so many of it happenings. And I'm just pleading with the President Tinubu, even if this matter, even if this minister is one of the, kitchen cabinet or favored minister, let him allow due process to happen. If any attempt or attempted attempt to cover up this, it will rather erode the confidence on Nigerians and international community on the capacity and the ability and the seriousness of the Bola and Tinubu administration to put administrative system that will be just and fair. So,
thank you so much. We're totally out of time, Mr. Rafsanjani, but we must thank you for your insights when it comes to the issue of watching how governance and government officials act as far as our public and commonwealth is concerned. People like you are the ones we run to help us explain these things. I must thank you for coming on the program to espouse this issue of allegations in the Humanitarian Ministry. Mr. Awar Rafsanjani is the Executive Director, Civil Society Legislative Advocacy Center, CISLAC. Thank you, sir, for coming on the program.
Thank you very much.
Welcome, absolutely. Now we switch gears to Benue State. I did talk about this, that we've been seeing since last year that the crisis in the Benue State political leadership, APC political leadership, has been festering with every given opportunity. So for those of you who may not have a background to this, before the elections, a lot of things had happened in Benue State, but we see that there are two levels of loyalties or alignment. Some people in the APC are loyal to the governor, Hyacinthe Alia. Others are loyal to the Secretary to the Government of the Federation, Senator George Akume. And the people that are loyal to Senator George Akume feel that the structure that brought the governor to office has been rejected. We even saw the caucus of the National Assembly of the APC, led by a Title ZAM senator, coming to say the governor is high-handed and accused him of a couple of things. And we had the Commissioner, Omale come to explain the side of the government. But today, it has taken to another level. If you know, in the next few days or about a month from now, the primaries for by-election will take place across the country. And Benue State in Guma local government area is the place where the election will take place for by-election, because the man who was occupying that seat is now a member of cabinet of Governor Hyacinthe Alia and is a commissioner for health. So he resigned his position, so there is a by-election. Now, the result of the primaries to field the candidate to represent the party has now unearthed the crisis, that division we talk about along who is loyal to the governor and who is loyal to Senator George Akume. I'm being joined in the program by an APC chieftain, Mr. Terence Quanam. Mr. Quanam, thank you so much for coming on the program.
Amen.
Also being joined by the Chief Press Secretary to Governor Hyacinthe Alia, Mr. Teso Kula. Thank you, Mr. Kula, for coming on the program.
You're welcome. Thank you so very much.
Let me start with you, Mr. Kula, as quickly as possible. The recent development has to do with what happened at the primaries yesterday. For those people who are not familiar with how things evolved to this point, maybe you could walk us through in about a minute how that happened.
Oh, yes. We received notification of the arrival of officials that we are supposed to conduct elections to fill the candidate for the APC in the by-election that's scheduled by INEC to hold very soon. And so the officials came. Ordinarily, it is expected that as the leader of the party in the state, the chief executive officer of the party in the state, our chief executive officer of the state, and the chief security officer of the state, the officials were supposed to pay a visit to introduce themselves before His Excellency, the Governor of Benue State. These people came around and they couldn't visit the governor. Even when he extended invitation to them, they failed to turn up. And so they did what they had to do, and a public notice was placed in a venue marked for the primaries to take place, which was at Avinebum Hotel at Daudu. But the following morning, when delegates and even the candidates got to the venue of the primaries, he was told that the officials were not there. So he called and made inquiries, only to discover that when officials got to the place, they were whisked away by some persons, some politicians, most who are not even from that constituency, not from that local government. They came, whisked away these officials, to an unknown destination. The report has it that they came with heavily armed thugs. And so tension began to mount. The youth began to chant war songs, protest songs, and the rest of them. His Excellency, the information got to His Excellency. And so he got to security operatives in the state to find out what was happening. The briefing he got led to a press conference he did in Government House and called off the exercise based on security reasons. Because if the exercise was not called off, maybe there would have been a breakdown of law and order. And as you can see, all the head of security formations in the state were with him because he called them, got briefing from them before he took that decision. And you know, Goma local government is a volatile place. Goma is always in the news.
All right, Mr. Akula, if I may butt in, Mr. Akula, because we do not have the luxury of time, so that I can get the take of Mr. Terence Kwanum. Mr. Kwanum, I'm sure you heard what your brother in the APC has said. I don't know what is your own narrative, because we understand that, according to what is confirming, the governor announced the suspension of the primary election after a candidate was cleared by the name Uche Tawase after that primary was conducted, because everybody's looking for a consensus candidate. So what's your own side of the story?
Oh, all right. Thank you very much. Thanks for having me. It's a very simple thing, but first of all, we need to commend the State Working Committee of the party for maintaining their calmness during the provocation that came upon visitors that came from the National Secretariat to conduct a national assignment that was bestowed on them by our national party. As we all know, the timetable was given, and the person who is supposed to receive party officials in the state is the state party chairman, Comrade Austin Agada, who has received visitors from the National Secretariat that mandated them, and then commenced the assignment of the process. The two committees that came, one was for screening and one was to conduct a delegate election. And right from the beginning of the process, we saw supporters of the governor that came to attack our visitors from Abuja. We saw supporters of the governor that attacked even the state secretary. So if the chief press secretary is complaining today that the officials did not go to greet the governor, obviously the chairman's life was under threat because he was being attacked with his death. It was his responsibility to secure the lives of the people that came from Abuja. The image of the state, as you know, was in dispute because we are a very hospitable people, but all of a sudden we have a governor that decided to attack his own party officials that came to conduct the election. Secondly, we need to congratulate the winner of the election. There was a free, fair, and peaceful election that took place in Daudu because the election time was given by 8 a.m. Election commenced by 10, and before 12, elections have been done. By the time the governor had issued a statement that there was no security in the state, the official has conducted the election and was almost in Abuja. And so it's quite an interesting scenario to know that today, the governor that had claimed all along to be very popular is now using talks to be able to sustain the interest that he wants to institute in the party. If you could recall 7 months ago, the Yes Father mantra that rode him into Government House has already derailed in Benue State, and that is why you are seeing these activities that are taking place today. There is no issue within the party. The party is that someone has lost his popularity and is fighting tooth and nail to make sure that people should believe that he's still popular. The activities of the party are done within the party. The Electoral Act is very clear about who has power to conduct primary elections, and it is the national people that come from the National Secretariat in conjunction with the State Working Committee that were able to conduct the screening. Two candidates were able
Mr. Kwanum,
to for the elections.
If I may button, Mr. Kwanum. If I may button, we're due for another short break. When we come back, we're going to continue to ask this question because we also understand that the candidate that is loyal to the governor was disqualified, and the one loyal to the SGF was cleared and eventually emerged winner by the conduct of that exercise, which later was suspended by the governor. So both of you will be able to give us exactly what the laws of the APC says in terms of screening and why the other candidate was disqualified not to stand against Mr. Peter. We'll take that, that part of the story when we come back. Join us again. Welcome back. We're still talking the Benue APC crisis. Primaries are taking place according to the APC in Benue State to field a candidate for the February 3rd by-election in Guma State constituency. But the party disagrees as to whether or not there really is a candidate. One group says they have a candidate in the person of Uche Tawase Peter. The others say, no, we don't have a candidate yet because the governor has suspended the primary that led to the emergence of this gentleman called Mr. Peter Uche Tawase. I've been joining the program since we've been talking about this by the Benue APC chieftain, Terence Kwanem, and then the chief press secretary to the governor, Mr. Teso Kula. Now, before I come to you, CPS, for a moment, Mr. Kwanem, just if you can answer me, or I understand the connection. Okay, let's talk to you, Mr. Kula, whilst we try to get Mr. Kwanem back on. The fundamental argument for those who understand what is going on in Benue APC politics is the fact that the Senator George Akume loyal group, or that are loyal to him, are saying that since the governor emerged as governor, they've been sidelined. So every opportunity they have to get a little seat on the table, they make the most of it. They say that the governor, as against agreement as so power sharing, on his side with his people, appointed as the SSG, the chief of staff, was influential to the emergence of the speaker, the principal officers, local government caretaker, chairman, and all of that. So wouldn't it be fair that they at least take this one just for peace to reign, in your view, if you agree with the argument?
I maintain this line of I maintain this position. These people who are making all allegations against His Excellency are not telling Nigerians the truth. If there's any governor, and I repeat, any governor in this country who has done well with the party, the machinery that brought him to power, that governor is His Excellency, the governor of Benue State, I sent you earlier. I give you these statistics. As soon as he came into power, the first thing he did was to take the secretary of the party to represent the party machinery in his ESCO. And he made that secretary of the party his chief of staff. The second thing he did was to pick the legal advisor of the party. And he made him the attorney general of the state. He also picked a woman leader of the party and made her an SSA on beautification. Now, 3 members of the ESCO that head the party before he came into power are part of Reverend Fadalia's government. How much more? Now, within a very short time, I repeat this, within a very short time, within 5 months, Reverend Father Hyacinth earlier called for 2 consecutive expanded stakeholders meetings. All these people complaining were all invited to these meetings, and they turned up. Those who failed to turn up sent representatives. They were allowed opportunity to speak at these occasions. But by the time he wanted to select a cabinet for himself, he sought for opinion and contribution of these stakeholders. They made contributions. When he wanted to select caretaker committee for local governments, he also called them and they made contributions. I remember one of the
Mr. Akula, if I may button because of time, if I may button, they have maintained consistently. In fact, they did a press briefing, a live broadcast actually, led by the caucus of the APC from the National Assembly, Senator Titus Zam, saying that they have not been carried along. So if indeed they've been carried along, as you claim, why are they doing this? Is a natural question. So what exactly, is it that the governor, just hold on, Mr. Kula, is it that the governor doesn't, just hold on, sir, please. Is it that the governor doesn't know what they want, or is not giving them what they want? What exactly is it?
The issue here is that I earlier told you that they should come out and tell Nigerians exactly what they want. What they are saying is a mere pretext. They are not telling Nigerians what they want. Well, let me tell you something. What the governor is doing in Benue State is to bring life to the people. And then these stakeholders are all involved. But one thing I know for sure is that some of these stakeholders are asking for too much. Remember, recently the governor bought 100 buses and distributed, sent to Wranglings, a state-owned transport company. It was on that day that these buses were launched, that this post started mounting pressure. There is something here, some people thought that anytime the government comes in, a chunk of what is coming on the table should be splitted and shared among them. The remains should go to the public. And these they keep asking for juicy position for them to plant their people. They are not looking for creativity. They're not looking for people with ideas. They are not looking for people who...
I must thank you, Mr. Kula.
Let's put it on the table and share. This is the issue, and they're hiding.
We are totally out of time, Mr. Kula.
The restaurant, I told you, he has consulted them over and over
Mr.
again.
Kula, we're totally out of time. My sincere apologies. We're totally out of time. I must thank you, the Chief Press Secretary to Governor Hyacinth Ali of Benue State, Mr. Teso Kula. Thank you for coming on the program. We couldn't get Mr. Terence Kwanam, who joined us earlier due to network connection. But of course, these issues, if you understand some of these politics, it has not ended. We'll continue to follow through and bring you the best of it. Thank you so much for your time and company. As always, do have a beautiful weekend and a week ahead. I'm Jeffrey Uzama. Good night and God bless Nigeria.